Hello and welcome to another Blackwing Lair video by Pendragon, and today we're gonna talk about Firemaw, the fourth boss of Blackwing Lair. Now, Firemaw is a boss with three abilities. The most important ability is a debuff called Flame Buffet. And Flame Buffet is an ability that every 3 seconds the boss casts, and that debuff basically says whenever you get that debuff again, you get fire damage done to you, and you get more fire damage done to you for every stack of that debuff you have. Um, Let me actually pull the boss, because we don't need the boss for the rest of the encounter to explain the mechanics. So you can see what the ability is. So here it is. Every 2 to 3 seconds he casts Flame Buffet. Fire damage increased every time you cast it, and that means every time you cast it you take more and more fire damage. The second ability he does is Shadow Flame. You just saw it. He does it in front of him. You need your Nyxia skill Cloaks on for that, so that the tanks don't die. And I suggest for progress you put it on your range DPS, your melee DPS, your healers as well, so that if the boss turns and hits them, there's a slightly higher chance they survive. Right? The other thing he does is what he just did. That's Wing Buffet. It knocks back the main tank, or whoever's tanking him, and it reduces their aggro on it. So when that happens, there's an increasingly high chance that your DPS will start putting aggro. Now on Firemaw that's generally not a problem, but on the next bosses that also cast this ability it will be a problem. And I'll explain why it's not a problem in a moment. So your main tank wants to position the boss here, against this gate. So you see the knockback being a problem there, and it can cause the Drake to turn around. That was probably because I was positioned wrong here. You can also position yourself in this corner, then you can't really get knocked back that much. But what's important here is that if you properly position the boss, like I'm going to show it here, you can use this corner as a healer to only see your main tank and heal him, and not get the stacking debuff. Because the boss cannot see you, you cannot see the boss, so he cannot apply the debuff to you. So your tank has to position him in such a way that you can do that. And if you can't do that, you need to tell your tank to reposition him. And usually how you do that is, let me not kill him, is you just run back as a tank, and then you turn him again. So you need to be topped off for that. And whenever you reposition the boss, I suggest your melee to hide, so that when you turn him, they don't get shadow flamed to death. Alright, let me just kill this boss, so that I don't kill myself. So if the boss is over there, let me show it again, and your tank is over here, you can stand so that you can only see your tank, but not the boss, because he's over there. And then you can still heal the main tank. And then as a healer, you should never take any stacking debuffs, which is very nice. The melee will be DPSing the boss from roughly here. And you can do this boss in 2 ways as a melee. You can either make the melee stand here, and then whenever they get too many stacks and start to take too much damage, they hide here. And then you could hide two healers here so that they can heal the melee. And then once the melee drop stacks and are full HP again, they can go back and start DPSing the boss again. The same goes for the range DPS, but then obviously over here they can just jump to the side, line of sight, and then go back in. Just drop your stacks in time and don't kill yourself, and don't unnecessarily stress the healers, because they need to overheal the tank a lot. So that's it for the positioning of the melee and the healers. That's all they should have to do this entire fight. The rest is a tank problem, a tank fight. And there's 2 ways you can tank this boss. So first of all, you always tank the boss over here. That's just the easiest thing. And to prevent the knockback, you probably want your main tank to stand over here, actually. But like I said, Wing Buffet reduces the aggro on your main tank. So if you have strong DPS that pull the threat of you if you get knocked back, then what you need to do is you position your main tank here. In the meantime, throughout most of the fight, your off tank will be hiding here, or in the other corner, doesn't really matter. Your off tank will hide, and then every 30 seconds, like just before the wing buffet comes, you say, okay, it's gonna be a wing buffet, off tank get in position, The off tank goes and stands here. And then probably as a main tank you want to just tank him here, right? Because if you do the tactic I'm going to describe now, then the main tank will never get knocked back. So then it's fine to stand here. It will never be messy. So your main tank's here. Your off tank goes and stands here. And then just before Wing Buffet goes off, so less than 2 seconds, your off tank taunts it. If it resists, he does a mocking blow. So maybe it's nicer just an off tank that you stand here, build some rage. If you're Fury Prot, then don't have stands then. Build some rage in arms. Mocking blow it first. If that resists, instantly taunt. You get the boss aggro. You get knocked back. The off tank gets reduced threat. And then instantly as the knockback goes, the main tank just taunts the boss and you continue the fight. That's the ideal situation. And ideally, if your DPS is high enough that way, you only need your main tank in full fire resistance gear standing over here and you can tank the entire fight without having to hide and drop his stacks. If your DPS is slightly slow, or they have to hide too much, or for whatever reason you get too much stacks, like 15 to 20 on your main tank has to hide. And what you want to do then is you get an off tank again over here. That's preferably the third off tank which is hiding as well. Then the other off tank which has been tanking gets into the main tank position. And then on the next wing buffet, you have the new off tank taunt the boss, get knocked back. The other off tank taunts it, takes aggro, and then their main tank can drop the stacks. And then I suggest you do that again and give the aggro back to the main tank on the next wing buffet in the same way. So to rehearse again for the tanks. Main tank position. Off tanks hiding here. Wing buffet's about to come. I say wing buffet in 10 seconds. You don't have any stacks as an off tank. You run in. You stand here. Wing buffet in 2 seconds. You taunt. You get knocked back. Main tank taunts. Off tank. Back to corner. You repeat this until your main tank has to drop stacks. Then you say, okay, I have to drop stacks. Off tank, get the main tank position. Second off tank, get the off tank position. So you have 2 tanks standing over here. Another off tank here. This off tank taunts just 2 seconds before wing buffet. Gets knocked back. The other off tank taunts the boss. If everything is well, main tank can run off, can hide, drop stacks, next wing buffet. Main tank stacks on the off tank. In the meantime, by the way, the off tank that was here can already start hiding again. This off tank gets knocked back. Main tank taunts. And if all's well, that off tank can go hide. And then you proceed and repeat from there. And that way, this fight should be easy. The only problem is taunt resist. In which case, melee has to be careful. Basically doing wing buffet, melee and range DPS should not DPS or do range DPS. You could even, during the more difficult tank swaps or the risk of tank swap, you could even say, please go hide. Like it's not a DPS race, and if they stay alive, they do more DPS than if they would stay 1-2 seconds longer and then one DPS dies. So they could go hide just for progress, until you get comfortable with the fight. And that's it. The tank swap is the most difficult part. Frying your melee is the most difficult part. Ruining the positioning so that your healers start taking stacks, that's the difficult part. And just communicate with your raid what you're gonna do. And then take your time doing it. The flame stacks, if your tanks are fire resistant, will not kill them that fast. And a couple of flame stacks from your healers is also fine. So if your healers are starting getting stacks, they can just keep healing and say like, you need to reposition. Top of the tank, he repositions, and then the healers can start healing just as old. So yeah, that's how I would do it, ideally. But sometimes it's just easier, especially if your main tank has a good fire resistance and is lucky on resisting the fire debuff. You can just put your main tank here. Like maybe for progress it could be very easy. You just put your main tank in this corner. And and whenever Wing Buffet comes, he just gets knocked up and then taunts after the Wing Buffet, putting him back at the top of the threat table. The only risk there is that it gets resisted and then charges off for healer. So if that happens, these off tanks need to be ready to taunt it, turn it around and bring it back to the main tank. And then when that happens, you might as well start dropping stacks as the main tank, and the off tank just takes this position. And this tactic is possible because all the melee and range DPS are hiding all the time. On the next bosses, where Wing Buffet also exists, you need to do the off-tank taunts during Wing Buffet and then the main tank doesn't get hit tactic. Because if you do not, their DPS will get eaten because they're doing way more damage. So on this boss, you can do this cheesy tactic where the main tank just taunts everything. But on the further bosses, you cannot. But I'll explain it in the next video. I hope this is slightly clearing up the difficulty with this boss. And let's see if we can do it much easier in the next clear. Thanks for listening and see you in the next video.